and welcome to Ridgefield and Fairfield County's Native Populations, Episode 4. My name is Kate Mosher-Ticky, and I'm a master's candidate at Southern Connecticut University for Library and Information Sciences. Today, we're going to talk about King Philip's War in 1675 to 76. As we know, after the Pequot War, which ended in 1638, the English thought they had secured peace in New England. And they thought they had done this under the treaty by stripping the Pequots of their name and territory. And this was also an effort to try and balance Narragansett versus Mohegan power. And also it opened up Connecticut settlement to the English colonists. And this allowed their dominance to really grow in the region. By controlling the Connecticut coast, they had become in control of the wampum trade. The Pequots, though, were not eradicated. They were able to get back some of their ancestral lands by 1666. And their return to their lands would actually inform the colonists on how to handle natives after King Philip's War, as we will see. So, the origins of Pequot War can be traced perhaps back to the Pequot War. Conflict never really ends after 1638. It's just different conflict. Connecticut and Massachusetts actually start to fight over the former Pequot lands that were opened up. There was also the Mohegans, who had remained allies with the English versus the Narragansetts, and they're trying to play for power with the English, and trade and the wampum all comes into play. The Narragansetts were actually trying to seek a similar deal to the Treaty of Hartford as they had with Connecticut with Massachusetts. Because they wanted all of the things that the Mohegans got, and that would create a lot of tension between them and the Massachusetts colonies. So, King Philip came to power in 1662 after the death of his father and his brother Alexander. They had adopted English names, and that's actually a testament to how close the two communities had become. But the colonists had remained suspicious of the Phillips and the Wampanoags and all other natives since the Pequot War, since the veterans of that war had spread throughout southern New England. And it came to a head when in January 1675, John Sassamon, a Christian native, he had been converted to Christianity, was killed. Witnesses reported that 3 Wampanoag killed him, and in June 1675, those 3 Wampanoag were hanged for the death of John Sassamon. This pretty much soured relations between the two groups. So when we get to the war, which begins in about June 1675 with the raiding starting of towns, we have the English colonies, which are the New England Confederation, Massachusetts Bay Colony, New Haven Colony, Plymouth Colony, and Connecticut Colony. And they're allied with the Mohegan and Mohawk tribes versus Metacom, or King Philip, and his Wampanoag tribe, and his 3 allies, the Nipmuc, the Narragansett, and the Pocumtuck. Rhode Island, interestingly, stays neutral during this. And later, which is not discussed here, but later Maine and New Hampshire do get involved as well. So it starts with the raiding of Swansea in June 1675. And throughout that summer, we have multiple skirmishes between the Wampanoag and English, and multiple towns are attacked in Connecticut and Massachusetts. Throughout the summer, we have a few more skirmishes in Wheeler Surprise, where the English are ambushed, the siege of Brookfield, the Battle of Bloody Brook near Deerfield, Mass, and then Springfield is attacked. And it comes to a peak in December with the Great Swamp Fight near South Kingston, Rhode Island. So if you go there, actually, you can see it is quite a great swamp. It's a huge swamp. And they think about 600 to 1,000 Narragansett were killed there. There was a village, they believe. So they do think that quite a few were women and children that were killed, or non-combatants. And King Philip then goes to New York State and winters there and trying to enlist Mohawk help unsuccessfully. Over the winter, they attack more English settlements, including Lancaster, Mass. And by March, the natives and their allies are able to march deep into Plymouth Plantation, continuing to attack towns. We have a major battle at Battle of Turner Falls in May, where Captain Turner and 150 of his English attack an Indian camp, and they kill about 200 natives, and only 38 English are killed. And then we have the Second Battle of Nipsachuk and the Warwick Massacre. And at this point, Philip, his power support starts to fall apart, and his allies start to flee. He flees to Rhode Island, and by August 12th, he is killed at Mount Hope in Rhode Island, hanged, drawn, and quartered, according to contemporary sources. So what's really interesting here is the impact of King Philip's War. It has been called by some America's most devastating conflict because of its nature. Again, 1 in 10 combatants were killed, they believe. And they don't see it as a war between an invading army and indigenous peoples because the communities had become so close. So they actually view it as more of a civil war. But 1,200 colonist homes were burned, and according to one estimate, they believe over 1,200 natives died and over 2,400 were captured, and that would be about 10% of the total native population of the region, because right before this war, actually, there was a plague. So with the loss of population becomes the erosion of sovereignty and land rights, their independence in general for natives. So after the Pequot War, there was some enslavement of the Pequots, but very little. Many were just dispersed throughout New England. And this time, the colonists learned from it. And instead of just leaving many of the Wampanoag to disperse around New England, they deported many through slavery to the Caribbean and Bermuda. There's actually still quite a large community in Bermuda to this day of them. They also forcibly separate Native children from their families to do this in order to start assimilation and to really destroy their kinship connections and their communities even further. Interestingly, why they decided to enslave people too, some were kept in New England due to a labor shortage in New England, and also the colonies needed money. So in selling the slaves to the Caribbean, they were able to make a profit, which had been spent on this war. Some colonists actually did think that this was too harsh. And so some colonies tried to categorize who was really at guilt during this war. And that would decide whether you were really you were sold overseas or whether you were kept in Connecticut as an indentured or slave. And as the colonists gained slaves from the Indians, actually Indian boys become a sign of power, of influence. And so many families of natives started to fear this treatment of their children, they actually started to commit suicide in order to prevent this. This would become known as the Algonquin Diaspora, actually, and many moved up to New York and Canada as well. This ended up destroying most of the native kinship connections within southern New England, and would really destroy their communities. Now this war, though, you'll see has a reverberation. It leads to further conflict later in 1690. So these are never fully solved issues, and we see the conflict continuing. Of course, we can't blame them because look at how they were treated after this war. So yeah, that's about it about King Philip's War. If you guys would like to learn a little more detail about the battles itself, there's a couple links here, including ConnecticutHistory.org and the battlefields of King Philip's War through the National Park Service, and a couple other articles in one book as well. So thank you again, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed and learned something.